Yeah, I've got one question I do want to ask Alvaro, though, more than anything. I just want to kind of see it as an idea, especially from growing up in the UK, about what I saw. In Spain, how was racism? And, like, have you seen any demonstrations of it, or have you seen anything when you were growing up to think, wait a minute, well, that's a bit wrong? Like,
Yeah, so I mean, it's a good question because it's a really different culture, and that's where you need to start it off. Because if you think about just the culture itself, how racist you are is based on your perceptions and your the context of what you grew up with. And even though in the UK, like, there's like so much, like so many different cultures and like so many different people from like varied backgrounds, like you've got such a wide community that
Very diverse.
makes it is really diverse. It is not as much in Spain. In Spain, you're Spanish, you're white, that is it, you move on. As harsh as that might sound, and obviously this is me generalizing, and there will be a small proportion of people that will be born in Spain and maybe they're not white.
I've never seen a black Spanish person.
Yeah, but it's like you say, it's a lot less likely to happen than it is in the UK. In the UK, you could have any colour, any background, because nowadays, it wouldn't be fair to just make an assumption of where you're from based on your skin colour.
Yeah.
However, at the same time, if you were back in Spain, it would be fair to do so. And I know that obviously it's not right to just assume someone's nationality based on their colour, but based on probability right now in Spain, obviously things could change, and obviously we could get loads of people coming in and staying and settling down in Spain, and then in 20 years time it might be a different conversation. But right now you're like, it's really unlikely that this was happen. Now obviously, to answer your question, I think that because of that there's a bit more racism
In Spain?
than there is in the UK.
Oh, because you see less
Just
coloured
because
people.
you see less of it.
Yeah.
And those that you do see, not that but you notice that they're not from here.
Yeah.
So it's easier for you to fall back into the traditional thing of, oh, just because you're a different colour, you're not from my country. Because in here, some people could say that, but they could be really, really wrong. You can't say that. But in Spain, if you were to say that, some people, I would disagree, but some people would be like, well, that's pretty much right. Like, what are the chances of someone being of a different colour and being Spanish?
Yeah.
So just because of that, it's easier to fall in the trap and just make those kind of assumptions that would be found as racist to some people and maybe not as much to others. So it's a bit of a delicate question, because I personally think that there's room for improvement, but at the same time, it's a different culture, it's a different kind of perception that people grew up with. So yeah, it's just one of them. I personally think that if I was to compare the UK with Spain, and obviously please do take this with a pinch of salt, because this is my opinion as
I'm going to clickbait you.
As a white male
Alvaro,
Spaniard.
Alvaro thinks there's no place in Spain for coloured people.
Obviously take this with a pinch of salt. But I think there's more racism in Spain than there is in the UK, or more like, if there is in Spain, we don't deal with it as much as we do in the UK.
I think, in all honesty, in Spain, I think it's more closet racists.
Yeah.
So you don't really see it, but then when the situation arises, they'll just pop off.
I'll give you an example. And you can tell me what you think of this if I was to say this in English, and if I was to maybe, in Spain, most of our off licenses, what we call off licenses, we call them basically Chinese.
What?
Yeah. So
Wait, what?
so you're going to the Chinese.
What, to buy alcohol?
Yeah. So well, not necessarily to buy alcohol, because we go to supermarkets, but say you want to go not maybe an off license, but just a quick shop.
Corner shop.
Convenience.
Yeah, corner shop. Yeah. So if you were to go to a corner shop, we wouldn't call the name of our corner shops is I'm going to the Chinese.
Really?
Yeah. And why is this? The reason is because, and obviously I'm making up the stat, but I could say that over 95% of our corner shops are actually the Chinese people who run it.
Yeah.
And this is not, again, making the assumption that they're Chinese. Like, you can see the writing of the corner shop. It's like they've got it writing in Chinese and Spanish, so that they've got Chinese origin. But it's so much in our culture that you do say, oh yeah, I'm just going to the Chinese. We're not popping into the Chinese for a minute. I'll be back.
I never would have guessed that the Chinese.
See, no,
have
because
corner
I
shops.
think the way the reference. I'll be honest. That's one thing I didn't expect. I didn't expect
Yeah.
Chinese people to have that many corner shops and stuff in Spain.
Because in the UK, corner shops are mostly owned by like, what would you say? Like,
It's not kind of Asian.
it's like yeah.
Pakistanis usually,
Like
or like Indians.
the
or-
racial slur is the Paki shop.
Yep.
Hmm.
I think we see a great example of that in This Is England.
What's
If
that?
anybody's seen that program, it's about like English society and stuff. It's a bit more of like a dramatized version of it, but like whenever they go to a corner shop, it would be an Asian man behind the counter.
Yeah.
And then obviously they'll bring out the racist slurs or anything like that. If anybody gets a chance, just watch This Is England, and it'll give you an example of how racism has evolved. I
Yeah.
think, like, so for instance, the way I look at it in the UK is that the word Paki was so popular to say that even though I'm not Pakistani, I'd get called a Paki.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's more to do with like they just see, oh, brown face,
Yeah.
Paki.
Yeah.
And I think
That's
that's
it.
when it gets racist, doesn't it?
Same with Chinese, Japanese, and Koreans though. They all
Yeah.
get called like chinkies, don't they? Or
Yeah.
whatever they say. But mate, I love the. If it wasn't for convenience stores, mate, I would be inconvenienced so much. Do you know how nice? I'm coming home from work late at night. All the shops are shut, and I need like some lettuce or something.
Yeah.
And like you go to the local corner shop.
I mean, I'd like to make a focus that obviously what I mentioned about Chinese, like we say it in a really like, is not to be said in a like disrespective way.
right.
You
Yeah.
you don't say, oh yeah, you're Chinese, and like you're looking down on them.
Yeah.
It's just because like they're genuinely Chinese, like they're not Japanese, and you're just making the assumptions there will be Chinese.
Plus,
like,
I think it's got to do with the language as well, because, for instance, in the UK, they say corner shop, convenience store. You get me? Like, we have so many different like ways of saying, oh,
Yeah.
just that shop, the off license.
yeah, exactly, and that's how you
or
grew up
Scousers, the offie,
The
going
offie.
down the offie lad. So I think
Get some scran from
especially,
the offie.
nah, lad, we're getting some milky rolls from the offie lad and some Kinder Buenos, kid. But I think in Spain, I think from a language side of it, I think that's probably one of the main reasons why, isn't it? Because I mean, do you have any like slang terms you would call the shop?
No, that's the thing. There's no slang as such.
What about Chinese takeaways? Because English people, a lot like there's a big problem in England that it's so normal to call it like the Chinese or even the chinky. Like that's
Oh,
very
really?
that's a
I've
very
never
derogatory
heard that
term,
one. I've never heard that
Bro,
one.
that
I've
must
always
not be
heard
in
the
Liverpool then.
Chinese.
bro. Like from
You
in
just say Chinese and Spanish,
in Nottingham, a
same
lot
thing.
of people call it the chinky.
Wow.
And like you don't think about how racist it is until you think about it. Like, do they not have like derogatory terms for them like that in Spain the way they do in the UK?
No, I'm trying to think. No, there really isn't, and the thing is, it's because it really isn't aimed to be like derogative as such. It's just
Yeah.
like a name for it, and some people would argue, oh, yeah, okay, well that's definitely racist, which I probably could agree with, in the sense that you don't know they're Chinese, you're making an assumption,
Yeah.
and the second you make an assumption, that's when it gets racist.
Yeah.
If you know the person, and if you know for certain they're Chinese, it's not offensive because you're not really you're not making it an insult, or you're not making an assumption from how they look like.
Yeah.
You just know the Chinese, and
Yeah.
that is a fact,
Yeah.
and there's nothing against it.
Yeah.
But the second you make an assumption from someone's nationality based on how they look, or maybe how their shop looks,
Yeah.
I think that's a second when it gets offensive, and when that should be stopped. And
It's like a generalization.
yeah, exactly. It's the generalization. Just like when you were saying before, Zaj, when you were saying, oh yeah, well, it just got the Paki word, just kind of like it was a name to like
Yeah, it was
encompass
the bubble
everyone,
of every
and that's
brown
when it
person.
gets racist, because before then, I'm sure that when it all started, it wasn't really started in an offensive term, because
Yeah.
maybe it was just maybe the word Pakistani was just too long, and you were like, well, I'll just say Paki because it's shorter. But obviously throughout the time that could have changed.